morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals. Today, we're taking a look at some of the best budget red dots on the market. Now, this is going to kind of be a top 5 list, but not really, because there's going to be a lot of red dots sharing the same spot. Some of them from same manufacturer, some of them from different manufacturers. But as somebody who has used most of the budget red dots on the market, I feel like this is a pretty good video to make. Now, this being a budget list, absolute monsters like the Sig Romeo AT, which has an MSRP of like $700 or $800, they're not going to make the list. This is going to be focusing on red dots that are under $200 usually, or most of the time. Again, prices will fluctuate a little bit, but sub $200 is going to be the price category for these red dots. Now, before we get into the bottom of the list, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as that is all free and it does help us out quite a bit. On top of that, go ahead and comment your favorite budget red dot in the comments down below. Now, getting into number 5, we have a couple decent budget red dots that are, again, under $200, anywhere from about $120 to $150 usually. A couple of them fairly new to the market as well. The first one is going to be the AT3 Alpha. Now, the AT3 Alpha is a T1, T2 style red dot, which means 20mm objectives, takes standard aim point mounts that you can find basically anywhere online. It is a 20mm objective, if I didn't mention, top mounted battery and rheostat adjustment. On top of that, it is a 2 MOA dot, 50,000 hours of battery, and comes with auto on, auto off technology. Now, from the factory, it comes with a couple kind of mediocre mounts. They're using very small cross bolts. In the drop testing that I've done on them on my personal channel, the body of the dot held up fairly well, but the mounts in question are not particularly good. So it's going to be one of those dots that it's about $120 to $150, and you're going to need to buy an additional mount, an additional Aimpoint T1, T2 style mount, to get the most out of it. As far as budget dots go, it's decent. It has all the features that you want: auto on, auto off, good dot, good glass quality for the most part. Again, we're talking about sub $200 red dots. Overall, it's just not as exciting as some of the other options on the list. Now, getting into the shared number 5 spot, this is actually a very interesting dot. This is the UTG Accusync. Now, you might be able to tell, but the mount on here is pretty interesting. This is using a mini ACOG style mount, which is, as far as I know, the only red dot, true red dot, using a mini ACOG style mount, which is fairly interesting. Comes with a nice QD lever, good adjustments on it. As far as the red dot itself goes, this is a 3 MOA red dot using a 2032 for 50,000 hours of battery life. It has a top mounted adjustments for controlling your brightness. I believe you have 10 daylight to night vision. I haven't tested the night vision settings on any of these red dots. The turrets themselves are recessed, and I believe they're half MOA increments. Perfectly fine there. The reason why this isn't a little bit higher on the list is because I haven't tested it extensively yet, though we will be doing a review on it in the future. It's also the fact that it's missing auto on. It has auto off, which is of course going to save your battery life. I think it's 8 hours it will automatically turn off. However, not having auto on is a bit of a bummer, considering it's about $150, and almost every other red dot on this list has auto off and auto on, meaning that, of course, when you pick it up, it's already on. However, with this one, it is currently off because it's been sitting for a couple days. Definitely an interesting newcomer to the dot market. If they do update it with auto on and auto off, I think it could move up a few spots, and of course, we'll see how testing goes on it. Now, coming in at number 4, we have basically the entire Northtac lineup. Now, the strongest selling point of the Northtac red dots is that they have all of the features, not quite all of the performance, but all of the features for usually under $100. Sometimes you can pick them up for about $80, which makes them some of the cheapest full-featured red dots on the market. So the lineup goes, you have the P10, which has an integrated low mount. You have the P11, which has the integrated high mount. This is just one piece of aluminum. And then you have the P12. This is your standard esque red dot where it has a T1, T2 style mount, and then the body that can accept any other mount that's on the market. Fortunately, the mount that they come with is fairly good. You have a decent sized crossbolt, not the biggest one on the market. You also have an integrated recoil lug, and there's plenty of material on the mount itself. You don't really need to swap it out. On top of that, you do of course have a 2 MOA dot, 50,000 hour battery, auto on and auto off, and it's still working. I've had this one for probably a little bit over a year and a half so far, and it's been working perfectly, and I don't really use it all that much just because I have other dots. I have reviewed all of the dots, and they've all worked fairly well. This one here has been dropped several times. No issue. Now, the main problem with it is that the execution just isn't quite there. So they use some sort of emitter refresh rate to control the brightness. So the lower you get in the brightness range, the more stuttery the dot becomes. And it is very, very noticeable on the lower brightness settings. It looks downright bad on the lower brightness settings. However, when you're outdoors in the sun, it has a very good, very laser-like refresh rate. Looks like a very good constant beam. But again, if you ever need to go down in the brightness, it starts to look really bad really fast. And on top of that, the glass quality just isn't great. And again, the main selling point of this is that it does have all the features: 2MOA dot, auto on, auto off, 50,000 hour battery, aim.T1, T2 mount compatibility, coming in at $80 to $100. It's one of the cheapest full-featured red dot that just needs a couple little tweaks in terms of its execution to again move up the list. Now moving up the list to number 3, we have the Primary Arms MD20 and kind of the MD25 Gen 2. Now the MD25, which is the larger 25mm objective lens, comes with either a 2MOA dot or the ACSS CQB reticle. The ACSS CQB reticle is good in intent in the fact that it has, your chevron in the center, holds for 4, 5, and 6, and then the outer horseshoe. However, it doesn't really look that great under magnification, so it can definitely help, especially if you're using like a 4x or a 6x magnifier to get the most out of that. It's just not the cleanest looking reticle on the market, but if you are using it for CQB applications, I think that the chevron and outer circle does work well. The Gen 2 specifically now comes with auto on, auto off. Another bad thing about the ACSS reticle is that it cuts your battery life from like 50,000 down to like 13,000 hours. And again, at a higher brightness level, 9, 10, 11, something like that, it's probably going to be all the way down at like 5,000 hours. Battery life on the ACSS reticles isn't great. And again, in the Gen 2, they did add auto on and auto off to the MB25. They're also bigger and heavier, and you don't really get that much benefit from the extra size and weight. So for me personally, they're decent, but not necessarily the best. Now the MD20 on the other hand is cheaper. It's usually anywhere from $120 to $150. Has all of the features: aim.T1, T2 compatible, 50,000 hour battery life, 2032 on the side, I believe. 2MOA dot, very good refresh rate throughout the entire brightness level. Really, the only thing holding it back is that it just does everything very well, and the price isn't particularly exciting. And again, anywhere from $120 to $150. There are going to be a few cheaper red dots on this list that do everything to the same level, which does make them a little bit better. Now, moving on to number 2, which will be a lot of people's number 1, I'm sure, is going to be the Holosun 403R, B, and G, and not necessarily in that order. The 403 series is Holosun's basic T1, T2 style red dot, so you usually get a 2MOA dot, 50,000 hour battery, auto on, auto off. The 403B has top-mounted rubber buttons. The 403R has a side-mounted rheostat that has the 2032 in it, and the 403G has the ACSS CQB reticle. Now, the prices are going to vary on them a little bit, anywhere from $99 on the low end up to probably $170, $180 for the 403G with the ACSS reticle. Again, if you like the ACSS reticle and you like the rest of the Holosun features, that marries together really well. If you like the top-mounted batteries and the cheaper 403B, that's fine. For me personally, the 403R is probably the best. I do like it aesthetically the most. It doesn't have any of the other gimmicky features of the 500 series. Side-mounted battery looks good. You can get it in red and gold, I believe. I have used a 403R in gold. Ended up not liking it, so I never did a review on it, but I did use the gold version. The dot looked fine. It just had that glare issue that some Holosuns do. Overall, the Holosun 400 series rifle dots are perfectly fine. They do everything that you want them to do, especially at the price point. They're not going to do some of the things that much more expensive dots do, but again, you got to keep in mind the price category that we're in. And for a lot of people, I'm sure they were the first red dots that they bought, getting them on sale anywhere from like, again, $100, $120. They're going to perform very well at their price category. However, my number 1 pick is going to be, probably to no one's surprise, is going to be the Sig Romeo 5, the Sig Romeo 5X, the Sig Romeo 5 XDR, the Sig Romeo 7, and the Sig Romeo 7S, and not to mention the Sig Romeo MSR. Now, I've used all of these dots extensively. In fact, I have my original Sig Romeo 5 here. This one here has been dropped about 30 times, and it is still working perfectly fine. The reason that it's in a low mount right now is I usually use it as an offset dot on my rifles, as I think it works really well in that application. And my number 2 pick, probably from Sig, at least in their budget red dots, is going to be the Sig Romeo 7, which is a big aimpoint comp M4 clone, has most of the features, though again, not quite there in terms of performance, glass, so on and so forth. 50,000 hour battery, side loaded, AAA battery, I want to say 30mm objective, 2 MOA dot, auto on, auto off, can be found on sale under 150 bucks. As you see it here, it is on a SKD 193 riser, which puts it above the Streamlight ProTac 2.0 rail mount, which is a huge light. The reason why I have it mounted on the top with the Aero M4E1 handguards, the thick, chunky handguards, you can fit a suppressor under them, but you can't fit a suppressor and M-lock on the rail, so it has to be top mounted, and it works quite well so that when I'm using the Romeo 7 with, again, the bigger 30mm window on a tall riser, it doesn't occlude any of my vision, putting a big light up front. Now, for the rest of the Sig lineup, on the lowest end, you have the MSR, which can be found for like 80 bucks. Now, it's a little bit less feature rich. It doesn't have auto on, auto off. It has a top mounted 1632 battery, 20,000 hours of battery life, but again, Aimpoint T1, T2 compatible at about $80, full lifetime warranty, all that sort of stuff. The Sig Romeo 5, which is probably going to be my overall best pick in terms of value. These can often be found for 100 bucks. They have auto on, auto off, 50,000 hours of battery life. They're very, very durable. Again, this is my original dot that's been dropped probably about 30 times at this point. Many, many, many thousands of rounds. And again, right at 100 bucks with all of the features. That for me puts it a little bit below Holosun in terms of price and at least on par in terms of performance. So for me, there's no reason to not recommend the Romeo 5. Now the Romeo 5 also has the X and the XDR versions. The XDR is probably one of my favorites overall. It is going to be a little bit more expensive, starting at around 150 bucks on sales, and it'll probably work up to around $200. Totally different mounting design. It does have a battery mounted in the mount itself, so no battery compartment off the body itself. On top of that, it usually has a 2 MOA dot and a 65 MOA outer circle, which is my personal favorite. And then it also has a Predator reticle, which is more for like shotguns and hunting applications. I don't particularly like that. Some people do, and if it's your jam, go for it. But for me, the Sig Romeo 5 is undoubtedly the best value to performance. Again, on sale. 100 bucks is very hard to beat with all of the features, performance, durability, so on and so forth. The only thing it's not going to do is night vision, and again, you're going to be spending more money on those dots anyways, and this is a budget list. The Romeo 5, 5X, 5XDR, 7, and 7S. 7S is probably my least favorite in that bunch just because it does have a little bit of a, not an emitter refresh rate issue, but when you get into the higher brightness settings, it starts to bloom out a lot faster than it should, even for a red dot, so it doesn't look quite as clean, but it is going to be quite a bit smaller than the 7, and of course use the same AAA style battery. Again, for me personally, I will probably always have Sig Romeo 5s and 7s laying around of different varieties, as they perform so well, not just for the money, but in general. Even a cheap Sig red dot is going to perform just a little bit underneath some of the more expensive red dots on the market. And again, if we're in that budget space, we're looking for how much performance can we get for the least amount of money, and I think the Sig lineup almost entirely fits that bill. So with all that out of the way, guys, let me know what your favorite was out of the list, where you would switch things up, or if there were any red dots that I missed. There are other red dots that I've tested that I haven't particularly liked quite as much, especially when we're talking about a dollar per dollar performance level, that sort of thing. So I know there's a lot of red dots that I didn't mention, but go ahead and let me know your favorites in the comments down below. And with all of that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.